Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Not taking your phone calls today, everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm angry at Louise, everyone. Wow. Louise from Richmond. Oh, she is something. I don't know what. She's something.
The stoppage.
She stood up and stopped the Potomac Yards thing.
The stoppage, but then the aftermath is
She seems to be enjoying it.
Yeah. That's a
Victory laps.
Even I'm like, Louise, you might not be there forever. You might just get it eventually. I
think she's 80.
Yeah.
So, you know what? This is a good sign for all of us that, you know what? Great things can happen when you get to 80. Life's not over at a certain point in time. She's having the time of her life down there, shutting down what she calls the Glen Dome.
Posting memes about it. I mean.
So I had it when it first came out, 90-10 it's going to happen. Fell to about 80-20. Still heavy favorite. It was going to happen.
I was 60-40 when you were 80-20.
I went 80-20 when Louise raised her hand. But it became clear to me when we interviewed people and I read all the stories that this is a bit of a stick-up. She wants some priorities for her constituents. Apparently, they haven't talked to her.
Yes.
And when this first happened, when they announced they were going to do this and actually held press conferences essentially saying it's a done deal.
It was overnight. It broke at 3 or 4 o'clock to announce it the next day.
The first thing I said was, this is split government. Nothing happens that easily. Had the Republicans done what a lot of people thought they were going to do in the election cycle, and that was take over the state legislature, then there would be no resistance to this, and it would have just gone through.
Right.
But because there is split government down there, they do have to negotiate with the other side because the other side could block it, and apparently they did.
Right.
Let's see. Here's the Washington Post piece about it. Virginia lawmakers have stripped plans for a new Wizards and Capitals arena from the state budget that they expect to approve on Saturday, blocking Glenn Youngkin's best shot at bringing the teams to Alexandria and potentially killing the deal. Calling the move a colossal mistake, Youngkin told reporters Thursday that one senator, L. Louise Lucas from Portsmouth is where she resides, though he didn't name her, says is acting as a single roadblock. Quote, it just befuddles me that we're not talking today about how to deliver it. Subsequently, though, Tom Sherwood, longtime news reporter here and political reporter in town, wrote that until yesterday, it was the first time that Ted Leonsis met with L. Louise Lucas.
Oh, wow.
First time through all of this. So I'll hear her complaints out. You ignored somebody who could stop this. Why would I just roll over for you, pal?
Sure, yeah.
Show me what you're going to do for me. And I said this when this started to kind of go the wrong way. You just got to give them what they want. Right. And it sounds like what they want, and they've been public about it. They want some toll relief in the Norfolk area. They want leaner and I think they want recreational marijuana to go through. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen or not under a Republican governor. I don't know. But seems like that's something they want to talk about. Mm-hmm. There's probably a couple of other things. But they apparently decided not to even negotiate on any of it. You know, whatever you think of the merits of the asks.
They wanted a commitment to Metro, too. Because Metro, they were very tight with Metro. She was very tight with Metro by going, you didn't just kind of pull a fast one on all of us. You pulled a fast one on the place that's going to get the people to your games.
I've lived here my whole life. I've known this about Virginia politics. Those people down in Richmond, they ain't too quick to do stuff for people up here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They got to know what's good for them.
Right.
And what's good for them is, what are you giving us?
Sure.
And apparently...
That's every state.
Yeah. But I mean, in this case, because it's funny, the population boom is here. The population boom, the economic area is here, and yet the power is in a much more rural, not that Richmond's rural, but most of the rest of the state is. That's where the power actually is.
Yeah.
So you have to convince them unless you have the government on your side to get your way. And he didn't, which I thought was the fatal flaw of just putting this out there. But when they held the press conferences, I went, well, this just must be a done deal because why else would you do that?
That's right. Right. Exactly.
And as it turns out, they didn't talk to Louise. And they overlooked that Louise has an important role.
Correct.
And I don't blame her on the part of, I can't believe you didn't even like. That's offensive.
No, I
you
agree.
didn't even bother talking to me about this.
Right, especially just how politics work. You need to meet in the middle. You're not just going to get what you want.
Also, they made this announcement 3 months ago now. Mm-hmm. So when I read Sherwood's tweet that said they hadn't met with her in the interim, like that seems like the easiest thing you could have done.
Yeah.
Is go, okay, the second she raised her hand in opposition and say, where do you want to meet?
Yes,
because you're apparently the only person that's in the way of all of this.
Yep.
So why don't we meet and talk about it and see where we are? And that probably would have gone a long way. But because they didn't even bother to do that, they just tried to steamroll her. And they're like, well, everybody else who's in the State House wants it to happen. Why are you standing up to it? Wrong.
Right.
She's got too much power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not dead. So I'm going to move this to 50-50 now.
Okay.
I still think it's very much alive. It is a roadblock. It's not going to be in the budget, which means it's not going to be passed that way. It means it could come in as a standalone bill.
Right.
Now, oftentimes those don't make it because the standalone bills get a lot of publicity and they're not earmarked in a total budget that no one's paying attention. There's a lot of things in a budget for the state budget. A standalone bill is going to get debated. A literal standalone bill is going to get debated. And then you're going to have more monumental opportunity ads coming out. So more chum for Candace to pull out the hatchet, or me for that matter, because
Right.
those were ridiculous when I saw them. And more opportunities for their PR team to try to figure out a way to message this maybe differently, or I would say more quietly, honestly. Because
Yes.
I think the reality was you were going to get this done. You knew there was going to be opposition. How could there not be?
Of course, it's a big decision. Like, you're
Ted-
always going to get knocked for it.
Ted acts like he's surprised by the opposition to it. I don't know why he would be, but he is.
Yeah.
Unless there's things about this deal that he believes are being undersold that are benefits to the state of Virginia. And if there are, he hasn't told me what they are yet.
Right.
If saying things like we're going to solve traffic problems is not the right
The
answer.
solution. It's the funniest thing that
No,
was said.
that's the wrong. Like, I'm not dumb. Like, come on.
When people ask about that, just say, it's always been bad.
Yeah.
We
Or-
look forward to alternate ways to get to the game.
Yeah, or how about stop putting out, facts and numbers that get checked by Eric Flack and find out that they're not true? Like,
Right.
please, that doesn't help your cause. Like, the reality is, the real selling point is this. Listen, it's good for your state to have our teams there.
Right.
Having
Sure.
professional sports, it is. Like, just you got to trust us on this for civic pride, for all, for the amount of, and it is true, the economic engine it will bring anywhere. It does. Like, we're going to bring thousands and thousands of people from D.C. and Maryland into Virginia every night, to go to these games. And that's a big deal, and so, that's good. And, yeah, it's good for me, too. But,
Right.
we're trying to stay competitive in a very competitive world. And in a very competitive world, we need what you have to offer. And that's why this is a good match for all of us. Period. That's it. Stop telling me preposterous things about it that aren't true.
Right.
Stop trying to defend it and stop acting like that, it's not a big deal that we're leaving D.C. Like, we got Disney on Ice. It'll be there. Don't worry about it. Everybody likes Minnie.
Still can't believe they name checked Disney on Ice.
Disney on, they could be there for 4 days now. Not 2, 4. Okay.
They have a residency for a month.
Great. We have you. Our phone is ringing off the hook with shows that we have to turn down. We can't have you here, Bruce Springsteen. I'm sorry, we don't have room for you. The Caps are playing the Flames. Give me a
I
break.
told you, we're very close on that line. We have so many shows.
So many shows. We got
Have to
so
turn-
many
have to
shows.
turn them down.
Turn down all the shows. Every great show. All the great shows want to come to Capital One Arena. Only Capital One Arena. But we can't do it. We got too many great things going on here. It's incredible. Ridiculous. So, you and I have been on the same page about the whole thing the whole time. They've messaged it wrong.
Correct. The PR about the whole thing has been the actual worst part about all of it. I've even said, and I've said it, you guys are probably sick of me saying it. All you had to do was hype that you could get land. The most simple term was that we have land to do all of this stuff that we cannot do in D.C. And nobody can oppose that because D.C. can't hand you the land that Virginia is handing you.
That's right.
If you just said that as your number one reason,
yes.
hey, there's not enough room in the city to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
And then you know what happens when the city pushes back on then Mayor Bowser gets to go, okay, well, if it's a land thing, we can give you an office building here. We can give you an office building here. All of a sudden, you're going to get what you want from either jurisdiction. The problem is they went full, we are going to Potomac Yards, and no one's going to stop us.
They also, here's my defense of him. He publicly, and I'm sure privately, complained about what's going on in the district, from crime to commercial vacancy to then the after effect of that, closures of bars and restaurants in the area where he's an anchor. He's also been mad about what I think are smaller issue things, but like...
Which they never should have said out loud, by the way, because those become the big ones. Like the music
is too loud. The music outside, that stuff like that.
That's literally part of the city.
He nitpicked a few things that are a little ridiculous.
And the one ramen shop with 2 tables that are outside that block 2 parking spots.
So there was nitpicky stuff that was like, come on. But the big picture stuff, I don't think he's wrong about.
Sure. And there's a legitimate conversation to be had there.
Even Candace said this, and I've been saying this for months since this came out. There is a level of responsibility on the D.C. leaders and the D.C. government for not handling and taking his concerns seriously enough to literally publicly do something about it.
Right.
They didn't. So they're very late to the party here. And I do think that they deserve to be taken to task for this as well. That's part, to be fair to Ted, like that is part of all of this. It's not like things are all rosy down there right now.
That's right.
And in a lot of cities post the pandemic, a lot of them are having the same problems that we are having with vacancies and commercial vacancy and hybrid workforces now, and people not going back to work and people living out in suburbs because they got used to it again. Like, I get it. Like, there's a lot of things that occurred that are really out of a lot of people's control, but it is the leadership's role to do what they can to try to fix it, or bare minimum address it. And his complaint for the last couple of years is, you're not even publicly addressing all of this. He'd even said stuff like, I'm the one who needs to hire more security staff to guard the arena. He goes, that really should be you, and you know it. And I don't think he's wrong in pointing those things out. There are things that the civic leaders in this area dropped the ball on big time, which started to lead to this. It still should not have been a negotiation under cloak and dagger that nobody knew about, that you just threw out there, because clearly he and Glenn Youngkin had a handshake deal for a long time.
Yeah.
And so that then reminds you, it wouldn't have mattered anything what DC did. They were leaving anyway. And the deal is, honestly, too good to be true if it goes through, because they're offering them an amount of money that is astounding, a parcel of land that DC just literally can't offer to them. Yes. And so I also do fall into the category of someone who thinks this isn't that far away from where they are now. Like, yeah, it's actually, for me, for where I live, it would be more of a pain in the butt to go to their games, especially if I drive there under current conditions. But, like, I don't feel like it's so far out of the way. They're not moving to Dumfries. They're not moving to Salisbury. Like, that's not what's happening here. So, like, that initial complaint I felt was like, get over it. Like, that, come on. They're not, like, that's a false complaint. And I think that they were able to kind of get over that. Now everyone's looking at traffic. Real issue. Stop telling me you have a solution for it until you show me what it is, especially when the Metro people tell me you never spoke to them either about any of this.
When they were planning to close that station.
Yeah, they're like, there's not enough people using it. And they're like, just hold on to that for a second. Why is that? And they're like, because you might get, 800X in the next couple of years. And why is that? You know we only have one escalator, right?
They're like, and it costed us $600 million.
Wait till that escalator breaks.
That's right.
Wait to see the mayhem.
And as you know, WMATA just gets things done really fast when that stuff happens.
My other favorite was if they build that garage, it might flood a lot. Yeah. And I was like, oh, God. Oh, God.
It comes on stilts when you park your car, apparently.
Oh, man.
Well, the other part about
you can pay the extra money for the non-flood zone part in the parking lot.
That's not the $5 parking. The other part about this, too, is what I really actually don't understand overall here is you watched what Dan Snyder and the Commanders did, and they tried to pit the jurisdictions against each other. But ultimately, no one really wanted to work with Dan. And that's ultimately why Dan sold the team, right? Like, he couldn't get a stadium. No single jurisdiction was going to work with him. Virginia did want to work with him, obviously, right?
Yes.
But what I don't understand is if Ted was really this concerned, and the Monumental Group and its entity, because ultimately it comes down to Ted, but people talk to Ted, obviously. He doesn't make this by himself, essentially. Why would you not say to Maryland, hey, we don't really like our situation in the city here. I'm talking to Virginia. You guys want in?
Right.
And then pit the jurisdictions against each other, get the best deal possible. Like, That's also what I think is
That's what the Commanders are doing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Everybody knows they want to go back to RFK, but they may or may not get it, and the better deal may come from Maryland or Virginia in the end. That's the reality of it.
Correct. That's what I don't really understand about this either, is even if he was buddy-buddy with Youngkin here, is do you not think Wes Moore wouldn't have wanted to have a conversation about you moving out to Maryland somewhere? This is what's baffling to me, is I thought Ted was a smarter businessman than this, where you get multiple people going for your services. Not to mention, if you say that out loud and Maryland says something, it means Mayor Bowser, her feet are to the fire too, to all of a sudden give you a better deal to keep you in the city. I'm just saying, from a negotiating and a PR standpoint, it's baffling how this all has fallen through.
There are two things happened here that were massive. And this one is, and I say this without obviously knowing what the negotiations were.
Yeah.
But one is Ted's personality.
Mm-hmm.
Ted likes to be liked and believes he's very liked. He feels like he's immune to a lot of criticism. And I think he's just thought, by saying this, he literally in his mind thought everybody was going to be psyched.
Yeah. Right.
He knew, obviously.
There are certain people that are psyched.
There are. But I think he was genuinely surprised at the pushback of the whole thing. Genuine, especially the immediate aftermath.
Yes.
Right. He was genuinely surprised how many people went, "You're going to kill the inner city.
Right.
You're going to kill it."
Yeah.
And how many people took issue with that? Mm-hmm. You're driving
that was the main issue. It wasn't the move to Virginia. It was what you're leaving behind.
Right. Which they weren't ever really going to get over. You could tell me how many Mystics games are going to be played there, which is, by the way, 20.
Right.
And that's just not going to replicate what's vacating out of here. And
different time of the year, too. It's the summer.
Different time of the year, right? And, the reality is, we don't know how many tickets they are really going to sell. Yes, they're selling out the much smaller arena, but it's a quarter of the size of what you're putting down there. And will Mystics fans want to go down there to this big arena? I don't know. Hopefully. I'm sure they'll get nice crowds, but are they going to sell the place out like the Wizards or Capitals do? Probably not initially. And then, so you're vacating out of this. You're telling me all these shows are going to go in there, but I know what the truth is. You're going to take the high-profile ones and put them in your new arena. You're not going to put them in the ones in D.C. So we are going to get Disney on Ice because you don't have time for that one.
Right.
That's what you're going to get. And then the other one, and so I think this is a hubris thing. I think he was genuinely surprised by this. Mm-hmm. And the other issue was, and I'll go back, and this is a mistake by the governor. And maybe it is a mistake of inexperience from the governor, who's made a lot of money, is a very successful businessman, and feels like he put together a package that he thought was, and whether it is really beneficial to the state or not, that's for the lawmakers to try to figure out and the constituents to think about. But and I said this the second they announced this, I went, you have a split government here. Which is why I thought it was just getting steamrolled through, because I'm like, well, he must have talked to them.
That's right.
Why would you hold these press conferences if you hadn't talked to them and basically been like, wink, wink, we're all on board with this whole thing? But as it turns out, they weren't. So it reads of a level of governance inexperience and believing that you're just going to get your way. And that's just not the way things work. Not around here. I've been around here long. I've never been in politics, but I've been around here long enough to know when you have split government like that, you better give back what you expect to give back to the others, or they will get in your way, even if it's just to get in your way.
Right.
This happened with the Democrats with Dan Snyder.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Old chap from Fairfax got real loud and started saying, I'll give you an off-ramp.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Louise said, Louise was watching Youngkin's press conference as this was blowing up yesterday, standing over him. And she goes, yeah, I am a roadblock. And they said, well, what would be a better deal in your mind? And he goes, if Ted pays for it himself. Then here's another lawmaker. Mamie Locke from Hampton, a Democrat, said this. We're talking about a lack of process. We're talking about a lack of information. We're talking about a rush of putting together a project that did not have to be rushed. There are all kinds of problems that were part of this whole thing. When this thing started and ramped up, they probably started talking about this a long time ago, Ted and Glenn Youngkin.
Yeah, right.
And when this thing really got going in the spring, summer, remember what was going on. There was an expectation that Virginia was going to flip both the legislature and the Senate. Mm-hmm. And if it was all Republican controlled, there wouldn't be a problem here.
Yep.
They were so far down the line with doing this, they unrolled it anyway, but were surprised by the election results in November that it wasn't their red wave that they thought was going to be. So they had split government. They should have dealt with it differently at that point. They should have said, we have this deal.
Yep.
We think it's really great for Virginia. We want to bring in the leadership on the other side of the aisle so we can explain to them. But they didn't do that. They tried to steamroll them, which never is going to work, ever. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle thinks they have the leverage to do this. Mm-hmm. The other side always stands in the way because they can't just look like they're going to
That's right.
to kowtow to anything.
That's right.
And Ted, on the other side, can't believe people are upset with him. Just can't figure it out. He's like, what?
All right.
I'm an angel. Why would everybody ever say this about me? And so now and this is what I hope doesn't happen, because if this does blow up, I'm going to go back to 50-50. Youngkin said there's no intention right now to do a standalone bill because of what's happening right now. It's nuclear.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
So he wants to
step away for a bit.
Step away.
Let it cool off.
Talk to Louise.
Yeah.
Give her what she wants.
Right, because it sounds like that's also the problem here is there was no...
Give her what she wants within
buttering
reason.
up done. Yeah.
Right. You know, Glenn can't do anything woke. Glenn can't do anything with drugs. Glenn can't do anything with CRT or IVF, okay? But maybe there are some things.
Last one,
yeah, maybe there's some things.
It's only been around for 50 years, but...
Maybe, but he can't do anything with it right now. He just can't do nothing with it right now.
That's what's going around
today. That's the
reality.
reality.
Going around today.
Can't deal with it. But maybe there are some things like, I don't know, give them the toll relief for crying out loud.
Sure, right.
Whatever it is that gets her to back off. And that's why I'll go with it is 50-50. If they go meet with her, she's had her moment. She looks like she's taking pictures like she's Rocky and standing over Apollo Creed like she won. And that's cool. Like, she's had her day. You know what? Go back. If you give her what she wants now, then she can get back on board. And it sounds like it's not too late to get everybody back on board because there wasn't a tremendous amount of pushback from every... She was the only loud one.
That's right.
Like, keep that in mind. It wasn't like all these Democrats came out of the woodwork and were like, what?
And remember, her job is mainly about the budget, too. Like, I mean, and she is actually looking at the numbers here, too. And it is her job, her sole job, to bring things to everyone's attention if she thinks it's worth it within the budget. I feel like it's worth explaining to people because it's not like she is standing in the way of this because she wants to stand in the way of it. She's looking at the numbers and saying, this doesn't add up. Correct. What else can you do for me? And they clearly didn't do anything for her that satisfied her enough.
So my read on it is this. Like, so she put a line in the sand. They, for some reason, didn't go talk to her and reason with her, which was really dumb. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now they need to go fix that, right? Or maybe they feel like they don't if they get enough support to do a standalone bill, which is why take a beat, take a step back, find out where everybody's pulse is. Let this get out of the news cycle for a couple days because right now it's nuclear all of a sudden and everyone's going, 1.5 billion. They're freaking out again, right? Give it a second and then probably reintroduce it. So I'm going to go back to 50-50 because it's not going to be in the budget, which was going to be the easiest way to do this. Now it has to be a standalone bill. They don't want to present it yet because they're scared that, like, everyone else will step up and go, I'm against it now, too.
Right.
So they need to give it a moment. They need to talk to the Democrats, which they should have done months ago, find out what they actually want so that they don't stand in the way of it.
Need to give them real numbers, too.
Convince them that this is a good thing for the state of Virginia. And because I didn't hear a tremendous amount of opposition, I agree that it's still on the table, but I'm going to drop it now to 50-50 because the easiest road to it happening and the way that seemed paved by Ted and Glenn and they felt like they were streaming towards it just got blocked.
Yep.
So now they got to go the hard way. Doesn't mean it's out, just means they got to go the hard way. And I think Ted today is probably reeling a little bit, but he better go down there with a bouquet of roses for this woman and go talk to her and say, what is it that you want that I can hear out and go talk to the governor about? Just don't hit me up with the hot and button issues that he can't deal with. That's all.
Right, exactly.
Right. And from what I read and what I've heard, she's not asking for that stuff. Right? She's not asking for codifying Roe v. Wade or IVF. She's not. She's not asking for the things that everybody's ticked off about this week. She's asking for some things of infrastructure and stuff like that in Southern Virginia that, I don't know, pay the price, guys. If this is what you got, $1.5 billion for a sports arena, then you got enough to help out her constituents. So, that's called do the deal.
You're telling me that the deal's so good for the state, so tell me what I'm getting out of that. I mean, that's the whole point, too.
This is the other thing, too. They dared this woman to back down without talking to her. Mm-hmm. They're like, you're the only one.
Right.
And she went, yeah, and I'm the one with the gavel, pal. And Ted went, oh.
She said, I work in the shipyard. I'll fight you.
I don't respect your authority. Like crazy. Like when Sherwood tweeted that, I'm like, what? They haven't spoken to her in 3 months?
Yep.
She has the gavel.
Right.
She can make this not happen. Would you think ignoring her was going to help? Come on. Guys, listen, I got no skin in this. As long as you guys don't move out of the area, I don't care.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, it's funny.
I don't care. If I'm still going to Cap One, great.
Yeah.
If I'm going to Alexandria, I'll reiterate. I don't have a problem with it. Yeah. I'm okay with it.
The funny part is, Ted, you're such a big fan of punk rock music. Louise is literally punk. She's standing up to the billionaire. You think if you gave her the opportunity, she wasn't going to do that? If you didn't line her pockets a little bit with whatever she wanted? Like, this is the most punk rock thing Ted has ever done.
Oh, yeah.
He's on the other side of it, though.
I don't know why he and the governor thought that there would be no resistance
once
they lost the election. How did they not know that?
Right.
But they thought it. And now Ted's finding out the hard way that, the news cycles can get ugly on the owners of teams when they make big decisions that happen to be controversial.
Once again, not only the PR is 1A of the problem.
Oh, yeah.
1B is, you guys didn't take anything into account with the last owner, that all the things he did and didn't do wrong, and just think, all right, if we have to do this, let's not do that, or let's do it that way.
I think Ted, this is where Ted's personality comes in. He believes he's beloved. And when he found out that not everyone's particularly pleased with everything he does, he actually got very upset about it. And the commercials that they've made, let it be shown. And then the commercials they've made and the defenses that they're making of it are so crazy. Candace Buckner took a blowtorch, took them. And I've been doing it too. I'm like, the craziest part is, guys, when you first announced this, I was one of the people that was like, I get why you're doing it. And I support you, actually. Yep. I hate what's happening to DC, but I support you and I understand why you're doing it. And all along the way, you've been losing my support because you're doing things that are so crazy. It's like, I can't do that. I can't. I'm not on board with that, guys.
Right. Exactly.
Our phones are ringing off the hook, though. They're ringing off the hook. Everybody wants to be a Cap
so
One.
So many phone calls, have to turn them down. So many concerts.
All day long. I just hang up. I don't even listen anymore. I just hang up. They call and I hang up.
I say to Zach, plug the phone out, take it off the hook.
All he needs to do now is start TED University and TED Steaks, and he'd be right in line.
TED shoes.
TED shoes. Gold. Would they be gold? What color are TED shoes?
They're red. Definitely red.
Definitely red. Rock the Reds.
Yeah, of course.
In Virginia. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram watches always ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Throwback Thursday is 2007, yes? Have we settled on that?
Yes.
2007 for Throwback Thursday. This is this No Doubt or Gwen Stefani?
Gwen Stefani.
Just
and
Gwen
Akon.
Stefani?
And Akon.
Got it. 2007, we chose that year because that is actually the last time that the Capitals had a season end where they would not make the playoffs in consecutive years. They actually missed it 04, 06, 07. 05 was a lockout year, so 3 straight years, and then the Ovechkin era really began. And until, we think, in a couple of months, it may be the second straight year that Washington won't qualify for the playoffs because that's the way it's trending. And not that it's not over, but they're selling off parts. So it would give you the assumption that it is unlikely. They just traded Joel Edmondson today. It's the second prominent player that they've traded off their roster. They traded Anthony Mantha to the Vegas Golden Knights. They traded Edmondson to Toronto today. And we'll see, what they do from here. There are probably a couple of others that are probably going to be moved within the next 24 hours when the NHL trade deadline comes around. And it's happened before that some younger players come in and teams get a burst of energy, and they do have good players on this team, and they end up qualifying anyway.
Right.
But most of the time, a sell-off signals that you won't, and you're looking ahead to the future. So this very well could be the first time since 07 that the Capitals missed the playoffs 2 years in a row.
Exactly, and it's worth noting, they missed it in 04. Ovechkin not on the team, but that bad year netted them Ovechkin. Mm-hmm. And then the following 2 seasons, they didn't make it with Ovechkin. This would also be the first time in Ovechkin's career since his first 2 years that he would miss qualified 2 years in a row.
Right.
So,
okay.
Literally bookends of his career, he is going to have two years, missing the playoffs. So we'll see.
Okay. In the meantime, the Washington Commanders have not made the playoffs 3 years in a row.
Do playoff wins. Playoff wins.
They're hoping they're going to change that this year.
20-year anniversary, guys.
New
coming
era,
up.
aura, the whole thing's going on.
Aura.
DQ, Joe Witt, going to turn the whole thing around. Crazy safety market. I'll get into that at 4 o'clock. Cam Curl picked a bad year to bad year. Now I know why they didn't tag him. Picked a bad year to hit free agency. And in the meantime, obviously, the next week's going to be interesting. The tampering period starts Monday. Wednesday, people can start signing people. It is my understanding and impression that the Commanders are going to sign a couple of their carryovers before we get around to Monday, before they get to that. So I don't know who yet, but I'm hoping to hear some news in the next couple of days of a couple of players that they want to retain, and maybe Curl's one of them. Like, if they can, now that he's seeing what the market looks like, flooded, maybe he'll think differently about his demands before he goes. Who knows? But maybe. So we'll have to see what that looks like. In the meantime, we also have the number 2 overall pick. Everyone assumes that they're going to take a quarterback. I think all options still remain on the table. Obviously, the internet's a tough place to be right now, especially social media. Everybody's an insider. You got to try to figure out what's what. I mean, every day there's all these different incarnations of what's going on. I am now trying to tune a lot of it out and just listen to Schefter, Rappaport, some of the others that are, no offense to the others, but even like Rossini, but the main people, that are involved. Ben Standing, John Keim, the people who I trust that are in and around it every day to find out, what are they really going to do? But the assumption is they're going to take a quarterback. And Ron Rivera made his ESPN, I'll call it an audition. I don't know if he was hired or not. I'm assuming he's doing an audition to potentially be an analyst for them for the upcoming season, and was on yesterday. And, of course, they asked him, with the number 2 pick, what would you do? And here was his answer.
I'd be curious to know, if Coach was still there, what would be his quarterback plan if he was still there?
All right, Coach.
The big thing, more so than anything else, that you have to look at is the style of offense they're going to run, though. You've got Cliff Kingsbury, again, a guy that likes the mobile quarterback, a quarterback that can move in the pocket, that can make the plays when they're downfield and throw the football. I think the big thing is you've got to have a mobile quarterback. So I really do think that's going to be, one of these.
Who would that be, Coach, of these?
Well, Jaden Daniels, just because of the fact that, everybody expects Caleb to go first. And so to me, if this is the style of offense you're going to have, you've got to have that type of quarterback, a guy that can, again, move around in the pocket, hold on to the football, find guys downfield, and just send it downfield to make guys make plays.
Does his slight frame concern you?
Not necessarily, because he is a big guy. He's going to add a little bit of weight again. I think he's the kind of guy, though, that will fit what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do.
Okay. So, as you might imagine, once that aired, the replies were, take Drake May.
Go the other way.
Right. I saw a lot of that, which is a funny joke. Yeah, funny joke.
It was funny.
My gut is that's the direction they're going to go as well, for a lot of the reasons that he cited.
Sure.
But I did find it funny, too. And he did qualify it by saying Cliff Kingsbury's the offensive coordinator, and therefore I would expect, and most people are like, he's going to want somebody who's got the Kyler Murray type skill sets to be the quarterback, that he's going to go in that direction. But it's just funny to hear him say you got to have a mobile quarterback when his quarterbacks were Dwayne Haskins, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Carson Wentz, Sam Howell, Alex Smith, Kyle Allen, Taylor Heineke's the most mobile of all of them.
Yep.
And I'm listening to him go, you got to have a mobile quarterback. Duh. For some reason, you didn't want one in the 4 years we were here.
Well, the offensive line was just so good. They didn't need one.
I don't want to become the revisionist because I like Ron a lot, but when he says
it's too easy. It's too easy.
It is too easy.
I do the same thing because
I'm listening to him say, well, you've got to have this. I'm like, well, you didn't try to get one.
I find myself doing it every day of saying, I can't believe I'm comparing him again. But when you just have a more competent front office and head coach, it's very easy to do and point out the things that went wrong last time around.
I don't think it's a shoo-in that Kingsbury's here and they take Jaden Daniels, assuming Caleb Williams is off the board. Right. Assuming that's the case. I think Caleb Williams is a no-brainer if for some reason he's at number 2, because whatever they change their mind for whatever reason that may be, whether it's, he's telling him he doesn't want to go there, or they do fall in love with one of the other 2 quarterbacks and decide to go in that direction, or keep Fields for that. Who knows? For whatever reason, if he's available, I think it's a no-brainer that we take Caleb Williams, and it's so on the nose with Kingsbury having coached him already. Assuming he's not there, I don't believe that it's a total shoo-in. I think people look at Kingsbury and see Kyler Murray. But when he coached Mahomes and when he coached Caleb Williams, they weren't running an offense that ran the ball a lot with the quarterback. They had mobile quarterbacks who could move, but the whole point of it was to extend with the arm. So I don't actually agree with his analysis here. I think Drake May's very much in play for them because I think there's just some assumption that because when he was coaching, he coached Kyler Murray, whose best asset is really running with the ball, or at least extending plays with his legs.
Right.
Not that he can't throw, but he's so fast.
Yeah,
obviously you had to make an offense that would cater to that being a strength of his. And so you just assume, well, you're going to get Jaden Daniels because he can sit in a different body build, but he can do the same things. He's so fast and can do stuff with his legs. I don't know about that. Did you watch USC? That's not what they were doing with Caleb Williams. Not that he's that fast, but that's not what they were doing with him.
Right.
Did you watch Mahomes in college? That's not what they were doing with him. That's the reason why those guys had the careers that they had. So I actually don't agree with that analysis that, because Kingsbury's here, they're definitely taking Daniels. I think they may believe he's the best prospect, and they may go that direction. And I've kind of landed on that's the one I think I want if it's the choice between the two at this point. But I don't discount it all for a second that because Kingsbury's here that they wouldn't take May. I think he's wrong about that.
I'd agree. I actually think that was the appeal. I don't think it was talked about enough. I think that's the appeal of Kingsbury coming here is that he ran that type of offense you just described, but they had Kyler Murray, and he made a tailor-made offense for him. What's been the number one complaint with Ron and some of the coaching that they did here? They never liked to bend their ways to the players they had. Kingsbury has done that.
I mean, never more exemplified than both sides of the ball of the last year.
Yes, exactly.
Both sides.
And so I think that was part of the appeal, bringing Kingsbury in of, hey, we can have our pick of quarterback here. I'm with you. If you have your guy, get your guy. But if something crazy happens and we need to pivot to another guy, are you okay with that? And I'm sure he's going, yeah, look at the guys that I coached in college, and then look at what I did with Kyler. So I think that's part of the appeal of Kingsbury is he can do both.
I really, at this point, in my point of view, I want Caleb Williams. If I can't get him, I can actually make a case for either one of the other two.
Yep.
And right now, I'd prefer Daniels over May, but that's just my point of view. I will not be surprised for a second if they go with Drake May over him because they determine they like his arm capability and his pocket presence and all that. If that's Kingsbury being here does not for a second make me think, well, they're definitely taking Jaden Daniels.
Right.
If they come to the conclusion that he's the better prospect, then that's the direction they're going to go. But I'm not going to be surprised by it. So I actually, Ron, for your audition, got to tell you, I disagree with your assessment of the whole thing.
He was good on the air, though. He
did a good job.
Coherent, yeah.
Yeah, he did a good job. Coherent. He did a good job. All right, up next, you're going to hear from I got a chance to talk to the director and executive producer of the Apple TV series Dynasty about the New England Patriots. It's great. Listen to that next. Very much the show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Let's welcome in the director of the acclaimed new series that you can check out on Apple TV Plus, The Dynasty, Matthew Hamacheck, who is the executive producer and the director and a DC native. Thanks for coming on today, Matt. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, let's start with DC for a second. You grew up here?
Yeah, I grew up so right off of 49th and Mass, basically.
So right by AU?
Yeah, right by AU, and spent, I was basically there through almost high school and then left, and now I'm in Brooklyn.
Okay, and you a big sports fan? I assume you're doing stories about the New England Patriots. Big sports fan?
Well, I'm a sports fan, but I'm not a Patriots fan. And I know, and look, the obvious assumption is, well, you must be a Washington football / Redskins fan. But the truth is, my dad grew up just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I think like most listeners out there that are sports fans, you realize you kind of get indoctrinated into whatever team that the family follows, and that's exactly what happened with me. So I'm a diehard Packers fan.
Okay, all right. So your dad, was in the government or transplant here? Is that what happened?
Yeah. Well, both my parents met each other on the Hill, and then Dad ended up going into the private sector, working for the Washington Post, and Mom worked at Commerce Department for a few years. So yeah, that's sort of their story. But my mom grew up in DC. I think she grew up in, I can't remember what part. But she's DC born and raised.
All right, cool. Well, maybe we can convert you one day. Maybe new ownership, the whole thing. You never know. All right, let's talk about Dynasty a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell me about. Let me just start here because I've seen some of the episodes. It's terrific, obviously.
Thank you.
You know, talk to me about cooperation with the team in putting this together.
Well, so here's the thing: is like I talked about, I really wasn't, a Patriots fan growing up, and we got access to, 70 plus players and coaches and front office executives and even rivals. And not knowing much about the team really afforded me the ability to listen to these guys. And, sometimes if I was telling a story about the Packers, I would kind of say, well, I remember where I was when such and such happened, and I'm going to kind of try to talk about that moment. And I just didn't know anything. So I got to listen and really get out of the way and let them tell me what it was like to be in the room when, all the decisions were made that led to great success, but also, how the thing sort of fell apart at the end.
So why the Patriots? What got you interested in wanting to do this story?
It's interesting. I was working on Tiger for HBO in 2021 or so, and Jeff Benedict, who had written the book that was the sort of inspiration for that, he was just wrapping this one up and just said, "Hey, would you be interested?" and everything. And what I always try to do when I'm telling any story is I find something that goes beyond just sort of. I try to find some kind of an organizing principle of something that goes beyond just sort of like the thing that it could be about. And so what I mean by that is with Tiger, it could have just been about a golfer who was really, really good. But what I wanted to focus on with Tiger, and it takes time to get to figure out what these things are that you're going to be, making these things about. With Tiger, it was this idea that Tiger was a sort of a blank canvas that you all wanted to paint onto, right? It was, his father had one thing he wanted him to be. We as the public had one thing, and then it was about basically the idea that in our country, we want to build people up, and then the second they get to the top, we want to tear them down. And that was sort of the organizing principle there. And so with the Patriots story, I was trying to figure out what that was. And then finally one day I was interviewing, one of the first interviews I ever did was with this guy named Ernie Adams, who's the director of football research for the Patriots. And he said a line to me that's actually in the 10th episode of the series. He said, "Everybody says that they want to go to the Super Bowl, but not everybody is willing to do what it takes to get there." And when he said that, a light bulb sort of went off, and I said, maybe that's what we're trying to figure out here. The question is, what does it take to, accomplish greatness and sustain it for 20 years? And, in an interesting way, once you figure that out, then that's your North Star. It's sort of this, you're always trying to answer that, and you're listening and having people send you in different directions in the quest to find the answer to that question.
When he said that, though, what did he mean by that? What did you interpret that to mean?
Well, it's a different thing. What somebody means when they say it versus how you interpret it obviously can be two different things. I think what Ernie meant by that is, he says it's all the late nights watching film to find one little thing that you have never seen before. It's lifting weights in the off season. It's all the extra things that you do that a lot of other teams aren't willing to do in order to be the best that you can be. But in the case of the Patriots, as a non-Patriot fan, as I started to talk to other people and hear the story sort of unfold, you have to realize that some of those things included things like, Spygate, and the question of what do you do when your back is up against the wall?
Yeah.
How did you get to the place when your back is up against the wall? All sorts of questions like that. And at the heart of this, yes, it's a football story, but it's a very human story, at its core, right?
Yeah.
And there's very little. It is about football, but there's very little football actually. There's lots of games and stuff, but it's not like we're sitting around being like, okay, and then they went into this formation and then they did this. It's really about the people and bouncing off of each other and how they created something and, eventually, unfortunately, that it ended.
Let me ask you about, obviously, over the last week or so since this episode aired, there's been a lot of controversy about the revelations that came out about things that Robert Kraft said to Aaron Hernandez. What is just kind of your general takeaway? I'm sure you knew that that was going to generate a lot of interest in what is being told in this story. What's your just general takeaway to the reaction to some of the stuff that came out with, which is part of the ugliest part of the Dynasty, the Hernandez saga?
Well, look, the reactions are very different depending on what region of the country the reactions are coming out of. There's sort of a 50-mile radius right around the city of Boston, and within that small bubble, there's been these sort of, and I'm learning this as we go, but there's sort of these turf wars that have been being fought for the last, 20 plus years of, are you on Team Brady? Are you on Team Belichick? Are you on Team Kraft? And all of these different things. So, and within that little bubble, everybody views the series somehow as being part of the narrative that they've been sort of consumed by for, 20 plus years. And outside of it, though, I think that, people were interested to hear about, look, the answer to that question that I was always searching for, Ernie Adams, the director of football research, says, look, with Aaron, do we know that there had been some things that had gone on in his past? Yes, they knew that he had been in a bar fight. They knew that there had been a couple things like that. They obviously had no idea that he was capable of murder. And so at the time, he says, we made a calculation. We were getting first round talent for fourth round price in the draft. And so, that was the calculation they made to get back. They had been, they had had a drought for, a few years at this point, and they were trying to get back to the top, and again, nobody could have possibly predicted what happened, but it did. And I think just, my philosophy with all of these things is you basically sit people down and you ask people questions. Yeah. And then I would just sort of put their answers into the thing. The thing with the Hernandez episode that was really important to me and that I discovered, my team discovered, was that these guys really cared about this guy. There is sort of the tragedy aspect of this, right? Which is that this crime took place and all that. But the thing that sort of was really interesting for me was that these guys still to this day cared for him deeply. And I wanted to make sure, especially in this episode, that this is one where I just ask the questions and get out of the way as much as possible and just let the guys that were in the room talk. All
right. Well, let me ask you, if you have formulated, you mentioned the turf war. What do you credit for all of this? Brady, Belichick, Kraft, all of them? You must have an opinion on it at this point.
I do. So in the 10th episode, I asked that question to Scott Pioli, who was the vice president of player personnel from 2000 to 2008 at the Patriots. And I say, what do you think? And he says to me, I think that question is disrespectful. It's disrespectful of all of the players, coaches, staff that have come through this building and did this as a team to make this thing great. And I think is the truth. It was always, a team effort. And that is very apparent when I think you sit down and you watch. And that's what made this thing unique was, there's been books written about Belichick, like Education of a Coach, and Connor had one, and there have been, Tom Brady had a Facebook documentary series, and he had a 10-part ESPN documentary series. Those were all through very specific lenses, but here we have 70 plus people sitting down and talking for the first time all together, and it's all of their perspectives.
All right, I'll let you go on this. You put together here something that goes into a lot of kind of unvarnished truth, and you mentioned the Tiger documentary you did. I watched that a couple of years ago as well, and you go into infidelity of his father, obviously infidelity of Tiger. It's a big part of the entire story. As you know, many sports documentaries are executive produced by the people that are the subjects. Can you kind of talk to me through this idea of doing something like this or the Tiger one that, whether they help you or not, really is more real and might be a real documentary in this kind of day and age of what the media is right now?
Well, I mean, you just never know what goes into any of these things. And I think that the important thing is that you get to make the story that you want to make. And in both Tiger and this, I was able to, and I think you get towards the unvarnished truth. And, the difference really between Tiger And this one, well, there's tons of differences, but one of the major ones was in Tiger, I thought his personal life was really part of the larger story.
Definitely.
So in this one, I wasn't interested. I didn't spend any time getting into Giselle and Tom's marriage, Robert's marriage to his wife, Bill's marriages, his divorce. And he had some extramarital affairs that came out, and then Robert's thing in Florida. It's just, none of that seemed to be getting towards the question of how do you obtain greatness. And so I guess in this one, there is no personal sort of stories. And so that was one of the major differences between Tiger and this one.
Matt Hamacheck is the director and the executive producer of the Apple TV Plus doc series, The Dynasty, New England Patriots. Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
I'll need a credit card that's got no.
I actually want a brand new house on an episode of Cribs, please. Be nice.
Underrated song.
Yeah. 2007 is when this came out. Throwback Thursday. We're choosing that date because that is actually the last time that the Capitals did not make the playoffs in consecutive years. And while there's still a fighting chance here, they're selling off parts. And they're not currently qualifying for the playoffs. So we are projecting. Polls aren't closed yet, but we're projecting. I'll go full Kornacki here. We're projecting they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
So this will go back to 04, 06, 07. 3 years in a row they didn't make it. 05 was a lockout year. 04, 06, 07, Capitals didn't qualify for the playoffs. They obviously didn't make the playoffs last year, and they're heading that way again this year.
Yes, correct, exactly.
Let's get into the NFL here a little bit. Well, now we know why Cam Curl didn't get a tag.
Yeah.
If there was ever a collusion against a position,
might be this one.
I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, this is crazy, actually, yeah.
Let's see. Adam Schefter put out this tweet today. Justin Simmons, who, by the way, is the best of this bunch. Jordan Poyer, Jamal Adams, Kevin Byard, Quandre Diggs, Rayshon Jenkins, Eddie Jackson, all available.
Yep.
Many of them salary cap cuts, including Simmons. He was about to make a lot of money. This list doesn't even include Cam Curl or Xavier McKinney, who I would argue is one of the best up-and-coming players, too. We got to see him a lot. He's a problem for the Giants. I was actually semi-surprised when he was one of the first ones. When they didn't tag him, I went, that's interesting.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But all right, okay, it's Xavier McKinney, and their defense stunk. So, all right, like, fine. And then when we didn't do Cam Curl, everybody's like, oh, God, what are we doing? And then it's like the cavalcade hit. So if you wonder if these GMs talk to each other about these types of things, they do, because this ain't a coincidence.
Exactly.
So Terry McLaurin a couple years ago picked the really right year to be a free agent as a wide receiver. If you are a safety in this league right now, you have picked a bad time to be a free agent.
Yes.
You are in what is definitively going to be a depressed market.
Well, not only that, I almost wonder, out of the guys you named, who gets signed right away? Like the top 2 or 3? And then when does wave 2 happen? I think you could see some of those guys not get signed until after the draft, right?
I think Justin Simmons is going to get a nice deal from somebody. He's a very, very good player. Adams is a high-end player, but there's a tremendous amount of baggage, and there has been some injury issues, but he's been real weird with reporters and all sorts of stuff about him in the locker room and doctors. So he's going to somebody's going to be interested in him because of his talent, but I bet that's going to be a low number, high incentive situation, probably. Simmons, I think, is going to get a big deal from somebody. I don't know what big is. In this market, I don't know what big is. Byard was great in Tennessee, was a trade deadline acquisition by the Eagles, didn't do nothing for them.
Exactly.
Granted, I think their team went sideways, so I don't blame him or anything, but he did nothing for them. He was a rental, and they went sideways. So now he's just available, but I think he's been around the block a little too long. Someone's going to get a deal on him for like a 1-year thing. Quandre Diggs was a surprise to me. I was surprised by that one, but again, this position has been devalued suddenly, and all of these people are just available.
I thought Poyer was a shocking one, too, just because he's like one of their captains, been there a long time.
The Bills are full-on resetting. The Bills, got rid of him. Tre'Davious White, but that's partially injuries. He's had an ACL, and he's making a lot of money, but they did get rid of him. Mitch Morse, who's on their offensive line, who, the names like that pop up, they perk up for me because we need offensive linemen, so that's a name that I'll follow heading into the next week. But He's been there a long time with them. Like, they're full on resetting. Gabe Davis is about to hit free agency. Like, they're full on resetting up there.
They restructured Von Miller yesterday, and people were kind of like, what?
Because it saved them a lot of money.
Yeah, right.
Because it saved, like, he did a deal for them because it saved them a lot of money. He gave them back about $10 million. So they were up against the cap. They had to do something, but they've let a lot of premier players go.
Yep.
That's a different team.
Yes.
That's a very different team now. So for Cam Curl, does this make this more likely he'll be re-signed here? I think so. Yes. I think what Adam Peters and the decision makers said was, and maybe we needed to let this play out, but like initially we were like, okay, let's see, should we tag him? Is he that level of player? That's worth having a discussion about. He's not Justin Simmons. He's not an interception machine, right? He's a very, very, very good player. But I don't know if we should tag him. As it's turned out, you shouldn't tag any of these guys.
Right.
And because they knew that the market was going to be flooded like this. So whether Cam is back or, my gut would tell me they're going to go for a cheaper veteran alternative because they probably like Quan Martin and Derek Forrest and they don't feel the necessity to overpay. So the question will be, and this is from the get-go, was what was Cam's number? And for about a year I was going, is he really a $13 to $15 million player? I don't think the market's going to dictate anybody gets that other than maybe Simmons, who might get that from somebody else because he is a very high-level player.
Well, and that's the other question here now, too, is, well, if we were willing to give $10 to $12 million to Cam, but then 13 gets it done with the best safety on the market, and then you're upgrading, like that could also be a possibility here. Or the other way, well, we could only pay a few million. We'll still get a very serviceable safety as well now. Like, I think this is where they're actually going to have a debate on it.
They were in touch with his people. So, like, they did want to talk to him and see where he was, and he probably put a number to them, and this is why we are where we are. And they're probably like, if you don't know this, you're going to be a little surprised in the next 48 hours what happens. And now he's competing with all of these other names for these spots. So the money is going to go to a few of them and not all of them. It's just a bad year to be in that position. But a good year if he's willing to take whatever the going rate is here, if that's what we're up for. So, like, let's just say that number isn't $13 million anymore. It's back down to 10 or 9 or 8 or something like that. And at that point, they may go, all right, do you want that to keep you here?
Right.
I have no problem with that. Like, I want him to get whatever he's deserved. He's just, hit the wrong year to be that position in the market. This happens to people sometimes.
Yeah.
I feel like this is happening a little bit to tight ends now.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Like, Dallas didn't re-sign Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz ended up going to Houston, got a pretty decent deal. Gesicki, they wouldn't give him the money in Miami. Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith both got nice deals, got cut immediately. Now they're signing lower rent deals because there's just an array of these draftable players that come in at that position, and nobody feels the need unless you're Travis Kelce.
Yep.
Unless you're Travis Kelce, there's no need to overpay for the position.
It's what? Kelce, Andrews, that it? Right? Are we missing
Kyle
somebody?
Pitts should be, but he hasn't turned into it yet.
No, he's not. Trying to think. Like, that's it, right? That's the top tier tight end list.
Kincaid may turn into that. He was a very high draft pick. Brock Bowers is going to be a high draft pick.
There's a ton of
we
those,
don't know.
They're all like that. They're all that potential.
The game-changing player is Kelce.
Yeah.
But what we have found is guys like Sam Laporta can be drafted and plugged in. Dallas did the same thing last year too. And with safeties, I don't get the grow on trees thing. Like, that's what I'm saying about tight end. It feels like there's the grow on trees thing is going on with them. With safety, I don't necessarily feel that way. What it might be is a sign of that position is devalued in the way people play defense right now.
Maybe.
That it's not necessarily like there was a period of time where that kind of jack of all trades, Derwin James, Jamal Adams, we could use him as a linebacker, we can use him as a safety, we can use him this way, that way. Then maybe those guys still have that kind of value if they perceived, Ron's words, position flex. There's a possibility for that. But maybe people are looking at the traditional safety position and going, the way we play defense right now, we need edge rushers, we need corners.
Right.
And that's what and defensive tackles. Like, we need a D-line and corners because that's the way the rules are.
Right.
They ain't covering anybody.
Right, exactly.
So because they're not covering anybody, do we really need to pay a tremendous amount of money? And that might be what's happening. It's just the way people play defense and where the money needs to be allocated. Top-tier corners, edge rushers. The rules are so in favor of the offense, and the passing offenses are so prolific right now that the only way to combat it is to overpay and get really good edge rushers that put pressure on the quarterback and really good corners that are sticky. That's where you got to pay your money. It's not for a safety right now. And this stuff changes as times go. Like, everyone who goes into the running backs are depressed market. Yeah, they are. because we're in a pass-heavy offensive era. That may shift.
That's right.
It may shift one day where people just decide they want running backs, and then all of a sudden, Derrick Henry is good. We're going to look back, and he's going to go, they're making $40 million now, right?
The other side of that coin, too, with the safety side of things, too, is I think, as you said, they're not covering anybody. But you had a situation here where, like, Landon Collins was playing that Buffalo nickel role, right? Where he was basically a glorified linebacker.
Yeah.
Well, now I think teams are also going, why am I not just paying a really good linebacker who I know is going to wrap up, tackle, not get trucked by the running back or get, beat up by an offensive lineman, essentially. It's like, I might as well pay for the position I need instead of this kind of hybrid guy that could do a bunch of different things but not do any of them well more than the other thing.
This has happened to linebackers too. The really, really good ones, like Fred Warner and guys like that, do get paid.
Yeah, right.
But the other ones, if you are an average to above average linebacker, there's no market for you because you're not covering people.
Yeah, right.
Now, we've learned that not having a middle linebacker is an actual problem, right? We found that out.
Did we know that? For 3 years, did we know that?
We know that is a problem. Like, you have to have a very...
Should they have signed one of those guys?
Cole Holcomb.
Right.
Yeah, that's the craziest one. Like, it really is one of the honest craziest ones.
Yeah.
He was never going to get a top tier money deal because he's not that player, but he's extremely capable. He's been in your system. He's one of them where I went, I don't know why they drew a line on him. Because how much money was he actually asking
His agent
for?
Didn't know who to call.
How much could he have been asking for?
Not much.
How much? Like, yes, he wanted a significant raise. Yes, he was going to get a good, solid veteran contract. He wasn't asking for Fred Warner's money.
Right.
Like, what are we talking about here? And I'm like, you have your middle linebacker. Sign him.
Yep.
What are you doing? Just sign the guy. Nope.
Of course, beloved in Pittsburgh.
Nope. Yeah, he had a bad injury last year.
But people still like him.
Let's see. Jonnu Smith signed with Miami today, so I saw that.
Yep.
But again, these guys have been devalued. He's low rent deal.
Yep.
Michael Thomas got released.
Yeah.
I want to see where he goes.
That was a long time coming, too. They were just dealing with BS with him year after year after year.
Yes, a lot of that. Did you see his tweets going after the Saints reporter, Jeff Duncan?
No.
Basically calling him a liar and that the team feeds him information that's not true and like wants to devalue their own players and stuff like it was pretty. And then he called him a broke. He was like, I'm rich and you're broke. It was, yeah.
Welcome to sports, pal.
Yeah, right. Correct. Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah, what do you want me to say?
Yeah, most of us, unless you are a select few, ain't doing this to get rich. Trust me. A few of us do. Not most of us.
Right,
most of us don't end up getting the same money you do, Michael. Okay.
God.
So he did that. He's going to be an interesting one because some contender will take a flyer on him for sure.
Sure. Yeah. He screams like a Kansas City.
Yeah.
Give him
Buffalo.
a small deal. Yeah, Buffalo for sure. Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
If Cincinnati loses, they lost Tyler Boyd, maybe.
Right. Sure.
You certainly bring him into camp.
Yeah.
If you're a good team, you bring him into camp and 100%. You go, all right. Or like, I don't know, maybe Green Bay looks at him.
I think in division, Carolina needs wide receiver help pretty bad.
Yeah, but you can't go to a place that stinks because you always know how it goes with a guy like that.
Sure, but I mean
that's why he has to go to a place that's good so that if he's a problem, they can root him out fast and it won't be a big deal.
Right.
If he goes to a bad place, then they're stuck with him.
Well, Carolina though, they really do need wide receiver help, and they could probably parlay the "don't you want to get back at this team two times a year" thing. I mean, I think it's
after Kirk goes to Atlanta, maybe he'll go to Atlanta, go to the rival. That wouldn't be bad. So
you mean they'll actually throw to him there?
That's right. Let's see. Then the other one, and the books were on this a long time in advance. Russ is going to meet with Pittsburgh.
Yeah. How about that smoke screen that got put up 2 days ago?
They dropped his odds like a week and a half ago to it was so far down that it's like
minus 110 or something.
What
like that.
do you know?
Yeah.
This was before he was even released. Like everyone knew it was coming in one way or the other, but nothing had been officially stated. And all of a sudden the odds changed dramatically, which was one of those. Who's the source of the book that changed those odds that knew this was coming down the pike? So your boy Hands is in trouble, obviously. Hands is in trouble. Hands and Mac, they're both probably going to be in different spots next year. We'll see where they end up. See if they end up being starters or not for somebody else.
It was pure Steelers way, by the way. Like they came out and said, oh, yeah, we're not interested. Or the report was they're not interested in anybody. But then the report came out that Russ was allowed to talk to teams. And now the report comes out that they want to talk to him.
Now they want to talk to him.
Just the Steelers. The Steelers always just operate by the book.
This is going to be, however you perceive him, this is going to be a massive deal. Because Denver is holding the bag on him, he can sign for nothing.
Yep, right, exactly.
Like he could sign for something as low as $2 million.
Yep.
Like, so he takes up none of your cap. I would look at it as no risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Zero risk. Yep. You're going to bring in Russell Wilson for $2 million, and like I'm sure he'll probably ask for more than 1 year.
Sure.
Probably.
Yeah, right.
He'll probably, because he's going to be like, I'm not going to do this for $2 million, even though I'm getting all this money. Like, I'm not letting you off the hook that much. You're going to have to sign me to something a little more than that. But if they sign him to like a 2-3 year deal, and the first year is $2 million against the cap, what a win.
Yep. Right.
Like a massive, massive win for them. It's an upgrade for them. I don't care what anybody thinks about him. It's a massive upgrade for them. And it gives them a fighting shot because quarterback's been their problem for sure. Their best quarterback last year was Mason Rudolph. They know it.
Right, exactly.
They know it.
Not only that, they stayed competitive in that division.
Yes.
That was literally like the hardest division to win in all football.
Because they're a consistent. You know how they're going to play. Yep. They play pretty hard. Their defense is always good. They've got Pro Bowl players on their defense, and they seem to, they draft really well on that side of the ball, have consistently done so through the years. They have the makings of a very good young defense. Again, just go look at their roster again. They consistently are able to do it. They need better quarterback play because they've got no real shot in that division without it. Between Lamar, Deshaun, or Burrow, you're never going to be better than all three of them without any kind of quarterback play. Like, they got lucky. Cincinnati, Burrow got hurt. Deshaun got hurt. They still were worse than them.
Yeah, both of them were still
They're
good.
still worse than them.
Right.
So they got to upgrade the quarterback play. I saw some segment on it was either Get Up or First Take, and it was like, is his personality going to restrict him from getting a job? And I'm like, no.
Not now.
Not when he's $2 million.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's a massive upgrade from 10 quarterbacks that are starting in the league right now, and he's an upgrade for 15 plus of quarterbacks in the league right now. And you're going to get him on basically a marginal nothing deal. You can do all the TikToks you want, pal.
Right, exactly.
Have at it.
The funniest part with that too, by the way, Curlin and Joe pointed this out before we went on the air. I didn't even realize this. This is the beginning right now of the extension.
Yeah.
They didn't even have to extend him, and they could have gotten out of this thing scot-free by letting him walk.
That's right.
Instead, they're cutting him before the extension.
The extension was stupid. This is
the worst deal and the worst deal in two different with the same player.
I can't decide. Is it this or Deshaun? What's the worst deal?
I think this one, because you're cutting him before the extension kicks in.
Well, they also Cleveland had to give him the contract to get him.
Yeah, right.
Denver technically didn't have to give him the contract.
That's right. Yeah,
they could have just taken the contract as is. Although Russ's people were telling him, I'm not going to agree to it unless you do it.
No.
But they could have held their feet to the fire.
Yeah, no, it took some time. It didn't come out.
We want you here, but you're going to play out the 2-year deal.
It took a while for that extension to come out. I don't even remember. It wasn't immediate, though. It wasn't contingent on the trade is what I'm getting at. He got introduced to the Broncos brass before they ever gave him the extension. It wasn't a hand-in-hand decision.
They're interesting. I saw rumors, I believe it because it was a Denver reporter saying they're trying to trade Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton.
I believe it.
So they got rid of Russ. They don't really have a quarterback.
Right.
They might get rid of their top two receivers. Both can play.
Yep.
I actually really like Sutton. I think he's a very good player. So they're going to get rid of both of them. Their third receiver's had ACL 2 years in a row. So his career might be over.
Yeah,
right?
right.
So they don't have receivers. They don't have a quarterback. They just got rid of one of their best defensive players, Justin Simmons. They've gotten rid of other better defensive players through the years. They're going to be a rebuild in that division.
Yeah.
In year 2 under Peyton, what are they selling out there?
Well, I mean, the bigger part here is this might also be
they hired him to suck?
Well,
really? Because how's he going to make that team good with what they're doing right now?
Well, I mean, part of that could be he's got a ton of runway. They traded for him. He got the extension. He could say that he might have said to them, guys, I need to take this down to the studs, and then I'll
They
build
probably
you
told him
something.
You've got to give Russ a chance.
Right.
He didn't.
Yeah, right.
He
right,
didn't.
Exactly. Yeah, he did.
He really
Yeah,
didn't.
Yeah.
He showed up there and basically tried to run him out immediately.
Bassett him. Yeah.
Yeah, just went after him in ways that coaches typically don't go after players, but because everyone hates Russ, they act like enjoyed it on some level.
Right.
And then, but now, he got his way. They're getting rid of Russ and they're eating dead money. Now they're stripping out the entire team. They're eating out a record amount of dead money this year. So their team, there's no chance they can go shopping for anybody. So they're not going to get any better. They're talking about stripping out all the other parts. It's going to be a shell of a team.
Right. Well, I mean,
they're going to be terrible next year.
The other part about this too is I don't know if you'd be able to compete with Russ's dead money anyways.
That's the point.
So they might just be saying,
let's just do it.
Get all the picks you can, acquire all the assets that you can.
But he's selling, I'm going to fix the rebuild. Like, they paid him that amount of money to strip the team down after year one so that they're going to be bad for at least a couple of years?
Well,
that can't have possibly have been the plan. There's no way that was the plan.
Well, the way he treated Russ right away, it might have been.
For him.
Might have been. I mean,
he got the job in there, didn't want to work with Russ.
Probably. Yeah.
Clearly.
Probably. Yeah.
Like, so obviously didn't want to.
Yeah.
So he makes life so hellacious and convinces the front office to make it hellacious too.
Probably, yeah.
The GM looks like an idiot right now too.
That's correct. Yeah.
They're eating $85 million of dead money for a guy who actually didn't play poorly last year.
Right. Well, he
didn't play poorly last year.
The Broncos, though, are one of those franchises, though, that not unlike I've said this about the Giants for years. They kind of just need a reset, though. They need a complete take it down. So, I mean,
I don't know. I thought they should have made it work out after the way he was playing by the middle of the year. I'm like, make it work out. You're stuck with him. His contract is what it is. Make it work out. Nope, we're not going to do that. And they kowtowed to the coach in doing it. And now the team is going to be eating, I don't know what, $100 million of dead money over the next couple of years, which means they can't really compete with the Chiefs.
Right.
Or the Chargers, who are just going to come on just from the coaching change, are going to be better. Like, how are they not going to be? That baseline is so low, and their team is pretty good. Harbaugh coming in there gives them 3 wins overnight. Well, overnight compared to what they were.
They could very well be part of the conversation. It's going, we need to get this thing back down so I can rebuild it back so you can compete with those other guys. Because no matter what they were going to do, they weren't going to be better than 2 of those teams.
But there's no way when they hired Sean Payton that was the plan. That's the part of this. This is crazy, right?
You don't know that. I mean,
we're going to go through a year with Russ. Let's just see.
If it doesn't work, then we'll tear this thing down.
But the weird part is they got competitive and it was kind of working. They decided they wanted to get rid of him, and he wisely was like, I'm not getting rid of this stuff. And they're like, well, fine, you're going to be tossed aside. And he's going, you're going to ruin your franchise. And that's what they did. They in Minnesota are the 2 teams I don't get what they're doing. Right. I just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with
if
Peyton,
Kirk signs with Minnesota, I'll then it was just all a negotiation. But if he doesn't, and they keep doing the things that they're doing, I don't understand what they're doing. And Denver's the same thing. I don't understand what they're doing. Raiders are a little bit too, but Denver, I really don't get it. Like, what's your plan? Explain to me what this is, because you're doing things that are very counterintuitive and clearly are not going to make you competitive. Like, who's going to be excited? Who's their quarterback next year?
Right. No idea.
Oh, man. That's frustrating.
Either way, they've got to, no matter what, though, someone has to coach them.
Yeah.
Someone has to be the coach of that team.
And
so
honestly,
Peyton's the guy.
So for Pittsburgh, they're just going to him like, hey, man, pressure's off. You're not making a lot of money.
Right.
Let it rip. You make us better. We got a really good defense. We got a great system here. Tomlin's going to cover for him. He ain't going to rip him every day.
Yeah.
He does a dumb TikTok. Tomlin's going to go, that's a pebble in my shoe. I don't care.